guesses for our question. So our question here is, how many teeth do you think a great white shark has? You know, they have a lot. How many do you guys think they have? So go ahead and pop it in the chat while we're waiting for our last few classes to join. I'll give you a couple more minutes for this question, and then I have one more before we get started. So just a couple more guesses for this one. And Daphne showed us that really awesome jaw of a lemon shark, I think she said it was. So a great white shark is going to be even bigger than this one, even more teeth than this guy. I see some good guesses. 300, 1,000, 2,000, 86. That's very specific, Chestermere. 200 from Noah and Javi. Okay, we're ready for the answer. They have 300 teeth. Can you even imagine fitting all those teeth in your mouth? That's crazy. Okay, one last trivia question for you guys while we're waiting. What do you think is the biggest animal on planet Earth? Hello, Hamilton. Welcome, welcome. What is the largest animal on Earth? Now, a little hint for you guys. We are talking about the ocean today, so that should give you a bit of a hint of what you should be guessing. The Incredible Crew says blue whale. Ooh, a T-Rex, an elephant. Ooh, T-Rex is a good question. I should clarify, what living animal is the biggest animal that we have? A couple of us say whale, but we need to be a little more specific than that. Those are good guesses. And elephants are definitely very large. I've seen them in real life before. They are the biggest animal I've seen in real life, that's for sure. Okay. Anybody else? And on YouTube as well, if you're joining us from YouTube and you have some guesses for what you think the largest animal on the planet is, you can type it into the chat on YouTube as well. We're going to be monitoring both of them during the event. So if you have anything you'd like to share with everybody over here on Zoom, go ahead and pop it right into the chat, and we will get your comments over onto the Zoom as well, so everybody can see them.
Yeah, and as we speak, Jason Nichols has posted on YouTube saying it's the blue whale is the largest animal. So
yeah, and Jason is correct. That is the right answer to this question. So I did notice a couple of you guys. We had Noah and Javi also guessed blue whale. That's awesome. We had Muriel Martin and Nicole and Mark both guessed whale. So the blue whale is the largest on the entire planet. So blue whale, just one of the amazing creatures that lives in the ocean. We're going to be learning about how to keep them healthy today. Okay, so we're going to get started in just 1 minute, guys. So just a reminder during the event, please make sure that when you are not sharing, you keep your microphones muted so we don't have any cross talk and we can hear our presenters speak clearly. And if you haven't done so already, I would love to see where you're joining us from. So if you just click on your name on our Zoom meeting, you can add your location into your name so that we can welcome everybody that's joining us. I'm just going to stop sharing my welcome music here so that we can get going. Okay, and let's get this show on the road. So welcome everyone to our Elementary Water Day presentation. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm very excited to talk about the ocean with all of you kiddos today. And let's jump right into it. So before we begin, I'm joining you guys from Canada. So in Canada, we do land acknowledgements before events to pay tribute to the Indigenous peoples of our land. So I would like to acknowledge that I'm joining on Treaty 6 territory. This is a traditional meeting grounds, gathering place, and traveling route for the Cree, Saulteaux, Blackfoot, Métis, Dene, and Nakota Sioux. I would like to also acknowledge the Indigenous peoples of all the lands that we're on today. While we meet today on a virtual platform, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the importance of the lands which we all call home. Because whether you're joining like me from Treaty 6 territory, or if you're across the ocean, our lands are all connected to each other through the ocean. Today, we're going to explore a little bit more of the relationship, not only with the land that we're on, but with the whole interconnected environment across our entire planet. So we have a lot of schools joining us from across the entire planet today. I would love to go through and welcome each of you guys individually, but I don't think anybody wants to listen to me do that. That would be a boring presentation, but I would love to take a second to share all of the names of all the groups that are with us. If I missed your school on here, feel free to pop your name into the chat so we can welcome you as well. But these are the schools that we have joining us for today. So we have lots of schools where I am here across Canada. We've got our friends from India, Portugal, Trinidad, the United States. We've got schools coming to us from the Philippines and Kenya and Uganda. So we have schools from all across the planet joining us today. And I would just like to take a moment to thank you guys for signing up and for joining us and taking time to learn about the ocean, because it is such an important topic and you guys have already done the first step of educating yourselves. So I hope that you enjoy the event as much as I know I'm going to. Hello world from our friends in cameras. Yes, hello everyone. So just a little overview of what we're going to be covering today. There will be lots of time for you guys to ask questions. So the best way to make these events work really well and to get a lot out of them is to ask lots of questions. So anytime during the presentation from Sydney or Daphne, if you have a question that you really want to get answered, the best way to do it is to type it in the chat. And that goes for our friends on YouTube as well. If you guys have anything that you would like answered during the presentation, go ahead and type them in and we'll get to them when we have a chance during the presentation. But we also have a little bit of time right at the end of our presentation for a facilitated discussion. So we'll have a little bit of time at the end to answer any of those last minute questions for you. And we also love to hear from you directly. So if you are willing to speak on your microphone, it would be great if you could do your little hand raise emoji and we can call on you and you can share your ideas live on the microphone. So that's also another option. All right, so without further ado, I would love to introduce our two speakers. So up first, we have Sydney Howlett. So Sydney is on a mission to empower youth to take climate action through education. Trained as a teacher, she has a diverse professional background leading outreach to post-secondary students, teaching elementary French immersion, and establishing environmental art programs in the nonprofit sector. As the engagement manager at Green Learning, Sydney leads the growth and impact of programs and supports educators in implementing environmental education into their classrooms. So welcome, Sydney.
Thanks so much. I'm so excited to be here and talk about water on World Water Day. Thanks.
Awesome. And our second presenter today, we have Daphne Austin. So Daphne is the online specialist at OceanWise. She helps others connect to the ocean through her background in conservation education and a Bachelor of Science in Combined Oceanography and Biology. An expert in creating connections through online platforms, she has also connected landlocked students across Canada to their shorelines, visiting communities as part of the OceanWise Aquavan 150 tour. She's passionate about inspiring others to make positive choices for our oceans. So welcome to you as well, Daphne.
Thanks so much for having me today. I'm also super excited to join everyone on World Water Day and talk about how cool water is.
Water is very cool, I must agree. So what we're going to do for this presentation, we're going to start with a little introduction from Sydney, and then Daphne is going to go second. Again, guys, if you do have any questions, you don't have to wait till they're done. Feel free to pop them in the chat and we will address them. So I'll hand it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. It's so great to be here and to have all of you joining us today as we talk about the power of water and some of the problems and solutions that we can address with water. My name is Sydney, and I'm from an organization called Green Learning. We're a Canadian-wide charity that has a mission to engage and inspire students. And the way that we do that is by creating free online resources about energy, climate change, and the green economy. Before I jump in, I do also want to take a minute to acknowledge the land that I live and work on. So I'm very, very grateful to live on the traditional territory of the neutral Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee people. You can see on the map there that I'm located just 1 hour west of Toronto in Ontario, Canada. And as we talk about waters and waterways, it's really important that we look to Indigenous peoples who have been taking care of these lands and really understand the interconnectedness of all of these pieces. And they're really leading the way for us here in Canada. So it's a really exciting time. And water is really exciting. The power of water is really incredible. And for centuries, we've used water for one main thing, and that's transportation. And transportation can be anything from boats to goods and services. So for example, we transport food through water, and it's a really powerful tool. But there's a lot of things that can also be transported through water that we don't necessarily intend or want to be transported through water. One of those things is plastics. And plastic can end up in really any parts of our water, from the ocean to lakes and rivers and streams. And And you might be thinking, most of this plastic in our oceans or in our waterways probably comes from water sources such as boats or marine life. And that's not necessarily the case. Daphne's going to really get into this a little bit later, but just to give you an idea, marine sources, so for example, looking at like discarded fishing nets or plastic from boats, is a really small portion of the plastic that's in our water. Majority of it actually comes from urban sources or land, which means that those of us who are landlocked still have a really big impact on what's going into our waterways. And the way that this land waste ends up in our waters is through what we know as stormwater runoff. And to explain stormwater runoff, I have this nice little design here. And on the left, you can see we've got some nice green space. So you can see there's grass and trees and shrubs. And whenever it rains on that left side, most of the water gets absorbed right into the ground. Some of it is drank by the trees and shrubs. The rest of it filters down through the different layers of rock, gets filtered and ends up in our groundwater, which then fills up our rivers and streams again. Now, on the other side of things, where things are more developed, so in cities where there's lots of buildings, lots of asphalt, so maybe lots of streets or sidewalks or parking lots, water can't be absorbed into there. And so when it rains on urban areas or more developed areas, that water needs to find somewhere else to go because it can't be absorbed into the ground. We call this stormwater runoff because that water is running off of that and needs to find somewhere else to go. Now, sometimes it can run off right directly into a river or stream or even the ocean if you live on the coast. But most of the time, what happens is it actually goes into storm drains. So you might find these storm drains on streets or even in parking lots, and that's where water that lands there can be filtered away. Now, there's a couple of different problems with stormwater runoff. First of all, is that it doesn't filter water the same way. So when water lands on, for example, the left side where there's lots of shrubs and greenery, that water can get filtered. So all the toxins or anything that's been picked up along the way gets filtered out before it ends up back in our river. On the other hand, if it's not having that opportunity to go through the ground, it doesn't get the same filtration. And so we're not able to have the same clean water going back into our rivers and streams. The second problem is that, as we talked about, water has this amazing ability to pick up and transport things. That includes things that it finds on the ground. So for example, if we're looking at a home, anything that you use at your home that lands on the ground can be eventually washed away through rain or even snow melt into gutters. And this includes plastic waste. So I'm not sure where you live, but right now here in Canada, we're just coming to the end of our winter, which means all the snow is melting. And what's emerging from all that snow is waste, garbage that's been flying around our environment. It's in the streets, it's in snowbanks, it's in our forests, it's all over. And if we don't pick up that plastic, the next time it rains, that's going to get picked up by the rainwater and transported into these storm drains, or worse, directly into a body of water. Now, when it goes into these storm drains, some of us don't know this, but most of the time that leads directly into a lake, river, or stream, meaning it's going directly into our natural environment without any filtration. Nobody's cleaning that up, and that's left for our natural environment to deal with. And there are definitely a lot of ways that we can help with this. And one of the ways that it ends up in the ocean is the interconnectedness of all of our waters. So for example, if a water bottle on the street gets picked up by stormwater and ends up in a local stream, that stream, it'll then flow through, maybe it'll lead to a bigger river, which then leads to the ocean. And that piece of plastic can then circle around in the ocean indefinitely. So for a very, very long period of time. The best thing we can do as landlocked folks is ensure that plastic never ends up in the water to begin with. Then we don't have to worry about cleaning it up. One of the ways that we can help address that is by looking after our storm drains. So we have this awesome campaign called the Yellowfish Road, where students are actually marking storm drains that lead directly into bodies of water. So if you find that a storm drain, maybe in your school parking lot, or maybe outside your house, leads directly into a local lake, you can mark that storm drain so that everyone in your community knows that we need to keep it extremely clean to ensure that none of that waste is ending up in that lake, which, as we saw, can eventually lead to our ocean. I want to share one really awesome project that a school in Manitoba, Winnipeg, Manitoba, here in Canada, did last year in order to educate their community about stormwater runoff. They actually created a digital walking tour, and anyone in the world can go on Google Maps and actually take this walking tour and learn more about the interconnectedness of water in their community. And what they did was they actually found out where exactly does all of this water that runs off of our school property, where does it end up? How much water actually falls on our school property and can't be absorbed into the ground? And so through this project, they learned a lot about the impact that water has on our natural ecosystem. And this was part of Green Learning's Flood Ed Challenge. And some of the money that they won from this challenge, they're using to plant trees and shrubs, which is not only going to create more green space so that more rain can be absorbed into the ground, but it's also going to help filter the rain that is falling there. So lots of really awesome things happening really across Canada and around the world to address stormwater runoff. And that's something that you as students can be actively involved in. Now, once this plastic ends up in the ocean, it has the power to move quite a bit. And to give you an idea of how much this plastic can move, we have this awesome tool called Plastic Adrift, where I can pick a spot, for example, where Daphne is in Vancouver. And if plastic were to enter the water or enter the ocean right at that spot, we can see over time how that plastic can travel around the ocean. And so plastic that's getting into the natural environment where I am close to Toronto can end up in places like outside Vancouver in the ocean. And so really we're all interconnected, and it's not just our responsibility to keep our own waterways clean, but it's our responsibility to keep all waterways clean. And so these are a couple things that you can do to address stormwater runoff. And Daphne's really going to get into this problem of plastic waste and some other solutions that you can talk about. So Daphne, I will pass it over to you if you're all set to really explore this problem a little bit more. And thank you, Rebecca. She threw some links there in the chat if you want to learn a little bit more about the Flood Ed Challenge and ways some students are tackling this issue in their classes. So thank you so much, and I'm excited to hear what Daphne.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for that introduction, Sydney and Rebecca. And Sydney, it was so cool getting to really think about where the water that, flows all around us is going. We see it fall from the sky, and then it travels down and it brings things with it. And like you said, a lot of that ends up in the ocean. Now, I am currently today I'm in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. So I'm actually right where that star is there. And I have a bit of a map here from Who'sland, an awesome website that shows some of the general outlines for some of the Indigenous territories or traditional lands of folks from around what we call today Canada. But I'm in Vancouver, and that means I'm actually on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of the Squamish, the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh First Peoples. I'm really grateful that I am on their land today and getting to connect with you all. It's really important that we think about how we as people impact the land, water, and sky around us, and think of ways that we can help protect it, just as they have since time immemorial. But we at OceanWise, if you haven't heard of us before, we are a not-for-profit that's international, and we have a vision for a world in which our ocean is healthy and flourishing so that it can also help us. You might have been familiar with our old logo. We now have a new logo. We have rebranded. So this is our new logo, just so you can get an idea of who we are today. But Sydney was talking about how all this water is flowing down and into the ocean. About 70% of the water on the planet is held in the ocean, and it will cycle from there through the water cycle around the planet. So even the water that is maybe off the coast of British Columbia, where I am, could have been something that you drank. whether you're in France or in Australia or the Philippines, all that water is traveling around the planet all the time. And it supports amazing life that we see in temperate areas, like in this kelp forest, as well as in tropical areas like our coral reefs, or even other ecosystems as well. But if we take a look at the ocean, we like to call it 5 different oceans. But are there really barriers in the ocean, maybe walls that divide each of those oceans from each other? No. Really, it's all one ocean that is all connected together. And there are some challenges that our ocean is facing. So I'd like for us to do a little bit of a warm-up. I want us to be able to share during the program some of our ideas. We can do that through the chat, or you can raise your hand with the, reaction button, and we can share it with our words as well. Right now, I want you to think of, what are some challenges for the ocean? What do we think? And if you do have questions throughout, like Rebecca said, you're welcome to throw those in the chat or raise your hand and we can get to those.
And I'm sorry, I'm just popping your question in the chat as well, just in case any of us missed it. So what are some challenges for the ocean, guys? And I did see Eduardo had unmuted. Did you have something that you wanted to share?
No.
No? Okay.
Well, I know that Sydney might have given us a few hints, some types of pollution that might be able to travel down our drains and into our waterways. So that could be pollution from maybe our cars or chemicals, even that plastic pollution like Sydney mentioned. I see Xavi and Noah, coral reefs that are suffering. Yeah, so from many challenges. So climate change could be one of those causing troubles. Oh, the Incredible Crew says pollution. Yeah, definitely lots of different types of pollution. Oh, Charlie Clam says temperature rises. Yeah, and in some areas of the world, we might see temperature decreases. But with climate change, we are seeing an average of a little bit of an increase. Yeah, I see other things like plastic. Nicole and Mark say pollution. Oh, swimming in the water pushing you back. So maybe currents in areas too. And climate change is even changing some of those currents, which could be interesting. I love it. There are, so challenges for ecosystems struggling to keep up. Definitely. So there's lots of different challenges that we see. Thank you so much for sharing, everyone. We at OceanWise have picked 3 for us to focus on. Those are overfishing, climate change, and ocean pollution. And I'm going to focus a little bit more on that plastics within ocean pollution today. But we also do delve into some of that noise pollution. So being really noisy in the ocean for certain animals. But you know what? No matter where we live, like Sydney was talking about, we have probably seen plastic where it shouldn't be. And where is it that we shouldn't see plastic? Feel free to share in the chat. Where should we not see plastic? Maybe not next to one of those drains that Sydney was talking about. Yes, the ocean. We don't want to see it in the ocean. That's right, Nicole Mark, or on the ground. Yeah, or in any body of water. That's right, Miss A's class. Oh yeah, inside animal stomachs. That's right, Charlie Clem. Definitely. So there's tons of different challenges with that plastic. But you know what? There is that plastic problem of us finding plastic everywhere. My question to you is plastic always a problem? Is there anything good about plastic? I'll let you chat with someone next to you in your class, and you can share in the chat or even ask to share verbally if you'd like. So what are some good things about plastic?
This is a tricky one because there's got to be some good things about plastic, or else we wouldn't be seeing it in all of these places, right?
Yeah,
Oh.
it can be materials that we use in everyday items like computers, which I'm sure we're all using right now. Yeah, recycling and making toys like Lego. I know Lego's pretty popular. Always a fun one. Yeah, you know what? It makes so many different shapes, sizes, textures. It's really good for so many uses. Plastic, it's cheap to make. It's pretty flexible. And you know what? It lasts a long time. Yeah, so Eastlake, yeah, definitely. Building materials and other uses in industry, definitely. Yeah, containers, that's right, Daphne and Noah. There's so many uses. So I have a challenge for you. We're not going to move around for this. We'll stay where we are right now. If we're sitting down, we'll stay there. But just take a look around the room. And I want you to see if you can point and maybe even whisper a few of the things around you that are made of plastic. You can point to some, you can whisper to someone next to you. Oh, I see Sydney found some. Well, Rebecca's found a pen. Sydney found part of her notebook. I know part of my watch is. My hair tie was. Yeah, earbuds, the camera, the microphone, the light that I'm using. There are so many things that we use every day that are made of plastic. And I'm sure that looking around our room, we saw a lot of items. That's because it's super, super useful. So yes, there are some negatives of plastic, and we'll go into that. But there are also positives to plastic. We're not gonna get rid of all plastic. It's too useful. It can even be really awesome for keeping things clean or sanitary. If you think of COVID-19, we've been wearing a lot of masks. We might be using a lot of medical equipment that we need to keep really clean. Sometimes that means it needs to be used once and then thrown away. But for some people, we don't need that. So in Canada, there are lots of communities up far north that have a hard time getting certain foods from the south up to them and keep it fresh for long enough. That's where things like plastic packaging is really, really useful for food to keep it good for a long time. But for myself in Vancouver, I'm really privileged and really lucky that I have access to a lot of fresh food, fruits and vegetables. So I don't necessarily need all that packaging to keep my food fresh. So is plastic all bad? No, there's some good plastics too. The problem is that we're using so much of it. And those big pieces, just like Sydney showed, they can travel down rivers and streams to the ocean. As they make that journey, they actually break down into smaller and smaller pieces. So I know we mentioned Lego earlier being made out of plastic. I want you to imagine that you just made a huge, cool Lego house or Lego structure. So you build that up. You got your awesome structure. It's pretty easy to hold it and share it with everyone. It's one piece. What if we take that structure and we smash it on the floor and it becomes thousands of little tiny pieces? Is it going to be easy to show that to our friends or to pick it all up and clean it up? No, it's going to be a lot harder. The fortunate thing with Lego is we can always put those Legos back together to create new things. But with plastic, it's not always that easy. A lot of the time, those little pieces that we get, they don't really have another use. They're just a problem now. We call these little tiny pieces microplastics. So teeny tiny plastic, really. And they're really just coming from all these big pieces as they break down. But those little pieces, those big pieces, no matter what it is, they can travel around the planet. Just like Sydney showed on that cool map, we can actually see where plastic travels around the planet. So if I am in Vancouver, my plastic could travel all the way around the world, all the way to Australia, or maybe all the way to Japan. If you live maybe in Brazil, yours can maybe travel all the way up to Spain. All of our litter is from all of us. And I want us to explore a little bit more about how this plastic moves around.
Visit any coastal beach in the ocean and you might find plastic, a lot of plastic. And when you see it lying there, you might wonder where it came from or where it ends up if it's washed back out to sea. Scientists are wondering that too. Turns out plastic in the ocean can travel almost anywhere given enough time, even all the way up to the Arctic. Let's find out how it might get there. The ocean is on constant spin cycle, powered by the sun, the tides, the wind, the Earth's rotation, the surrounding land masses, the continents, and variations in water density. When a piece of plastic finds its way into the ocean, there's a lot of things that could happen. It might get washed back to shore and end up as beach plastic, or an animal like an albatross or a sea turtle might eat it, mistaking it for their natural prey. But what happens if the wind and the currents take it further out to sea? Far away from land, the piece of plastic encounters what's called a gyre. It's a circulating whirlpool created by the Earth's rotation and global wind patterns, found in all 5 major oceans. There's the North Pacific and South Pacific gyres, the North Atlantic and South Atlantic gyres, and the Indian Ocean gyre. At the center of these gyres where this plastic collects are where you get these massive garbage patches that you've probably heard of. 1 square kilometer in these areas can contain over 500,000 pieces of plastic. The plastic might spin for months or years before some water variation or a storm spits it out. Depending on which gyre our plastic finds itself in, it could end up in the Gulf Stream along the east coast of North America, which travels all the way up into the Arctic. Now, visit any
Sorry, I don't know if it's just me, but Daphne, I can't hear your audio.
Oh, thank you.
There you go.
So we just figured out that this plastic can travel all over the world. And I want to tell you about a crazy story. And that is that there was a ship that actually had a bunch of rubber duckies, a whole bunch of bath toys on it. And it was supposed to be traveling from Hong Kong all the way over to North America. But on the way, that container of rubber duckies fell off the ship. Yes. And what we had was a whole bunch, thousands of rubber duckies, all on the run, maybe more on the float. And we actually got to watch where the currents took all these rubber duckies. So they fell off the boat in 1992, and over the next, 10, 15 years, we have actually found these duckies all over the world. Actually a website set up where people could take pictures of where they found them and post where they were. And scientists were tracking all the different locations of where these rubber duckies went on their great journey. So there's a lot of places where our plastic or other items can travel on the planet. But there's someone else who travels big distances in the ocean and might even eat some tiny things that they find. So I have my friends, the Humpback Whales here, and they have a question for you. If they're hungry, what is it that they would eat? Would it be the first or the second image that they should eat? What do you think? Should they eat the first one or the second one? What do you think?
Ooh, we've already got some disagreement in our answers here.
Oh.
We're thinking first, some second.
We've got some good guesses. In this case, the first one is actually a bunch of little microplastics. The second one is actually a bunch of plankton. In this case, zooplankton, little animals that are going to be swimming around in the ocean. So it's really easy to not be able to figure out what is food and what might be plastic in the ocean. That can be a big problem for many of these animals. So it's time to problem solve. I want you to brainstorm some ways that we can help keep plastic out of the ocean and the water around us. You may not live near the ocean, but you might live near a stream or a lake or a river. What are some ideas you have to keep plastic out of that environment? Feel free to share in the chat, or feel free to let us know if you'd like to unmute yourself. Don't litter. Definitely. So maybe do a shoreline cleanup.
Here, if you want, while you're typing them in, I can read them out to you. So yeah, we have don't litter and clean up garbage.
Yeah.
We can use less plastic when you don't need them, right? Reduce. That's awesome.
Definitely.
Make it against the law. That one's from Nicole Charlie. We've got East Lake saying that we can charge more money for plastics. Xavi and Noah say make a big box and trap all of it. There are lots of companies that are trying to figure things like that out. So that's a really good guess.
Yeah.
Okay. Abderman, I hope I'm saying your name correctly. Make a big machine that takes all the plastic in the water. Yep.
And there are some real world examples of big projects that are trying to do that. The biggest problem though is how to catch the plastics and not the other animals that are nearby. So it's a big challenge that we have to think about.
Yeah, and Sparch says don't leave it on beaches. Yeah, for sure. When you're that close to a water source, you definitely do not want to be leaving your plastics out.
And I'm going to add to that. I'm going to say on beaches or on the ground at all. We don't want it there. Amazing. Well, we have some great guesses here. I'll give you another 10 or so seconds to put any other suggestions in there, but I would say we've got a really great list here. Now, I want you to take a quick second to think about, are there any of these things that you or your community is already doing? I'll give you maybe 10 seconds to discuss with someone next to you. Do you do any of these things, or does your community?
I'm really hoping that everybody is saying that they already don't litter. I really hope.
I would imagine so. All right, well, hopefully you got a chance to share that with everyone around you. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen here because I think that we have a couple things we probably don't, that we already do. And that's awesome. So I have a quick game for us. All right, I'll get our attention back. I would love for you, oh, we've got another suggestion. Oh, pick it up and make it into structures. Yeah, sometimes we can make art with it or reuse those items in many different ways, definitely. Okay, I would love for us to all share 5 fingers. All right, so this is a little game called Have I Ever? So if you have done the thing I say, you can put away a finger. All right. So I have a water bottle or a cup that I wash and reuse day after day. If you have a water bottle or something else to drink out of that you wash and reuse, take away a finger. I have containers in my lunch or for snacks, maybe just leftovers at home. If you have containers you wash and reuse, take away a finger. I have used someone else's old clothing before. You've used some hand-me-downs or someone else's old clothing. Sometimes I like to swap clothing with friends. That's awesome. I like to learn more about what I can do to help water and the planet.
With everybody being here, I'm pretty sure that one's going to be a finger.
I hope so. And the last one is I like to share what I know with others. If we all share things that we know to do with others, that means that they're going to be able to make decisions too to help. So there's so many things that we can do to help the ocean. We had some amazing suggestions here. I love to see those. And I want to just go into a few of these that we talked about. And that is something like refusing plastic. So maybe saying, I don't think I need that plastic straw, or you know what, I don't need that plastic bag. I can carry those few items. We can also reduce the amount of plastic that we are using. So maybe that is not needing a new piece of clothing. Maybe that is asking friends if they want to swap instead. That could also be a bit of that reusing as well. So maybe reusing those containers or reusing a water bottle. That's a great reuse. We also want to recycle anything that we can't refuse, reduce, or reuse. And we also, this one almost should be at the top, is rethink how we think about plastics and waste. So what are, just like we did earlier, rethinking some suggestions of ways to use things. And I think one of the things we thought about was those washing and reusing things. I like to use the example of these wonderful single-use plastic baggies, which can be super handy. And I still use one every once in a while. But if we use one every single day in our lunch at school, at least here in Canada, most schools do about 180 days. So if we use one every day, that'd be 180 plastic bags just for you. That's quite a few. Or we could swap that. We could reuse one single-use container. We can reuse that one container. And that container can last multiple years. So it could end up being thousands of plastic bags that you have not needed to use. That saves a lot of plastic from ever needing to be litter or potentially making its way to an ecosystem. If there is plastic that makes its way to an ecosystem, though, you can always lead a ocean-wise shoreline cleanup. It is very popular throughout Canada as well as parts of the state, but there have been people that have done them in other countries around the world as well. And you actually track what you are picking up as you go along on your cleanup. So you can see here, even just in the year 2020, just food wrappers, number 3 on the list of popular items found. In just 1 year, 21,800 food wrappers were found by people just like you across Canada and other countries. That's a lot. You know what? That means that's a lot of plastics and litter that isn't going to hurt that environment. There are so many ways that we can help make a difference, especially when we do it all together. It's way more fun when we do things with friends and family and our community. But I think we all have some great ideas, great suggestions for things we can do. We'll get to discuss it more and go over some questions. But thank you so much for joining us all today on this journey around water, the ocean, and what we can do to make a difference. We'd love to hear your questions.
Thank you so much, Daphne. That's awesome. While we're just waiting, guys, if you do have any questions, now's your chance to pop them in the chat. We have about 10 more minutes before we have to wrap up. So now's your chance. If you have any questions about plastics or anything else about the ocean, these two ladies will definitely have your answers. While we're waiting for those questions to come through, I did see there were just a couple new comments that we got. So Christian said that you can use more trash cans, which is awesome, right? Then our garbage doesn't end up on the ground. Clean up most garbage on shores and such. Okay, doing those beach cleanups, right? We just talked about it. Using less plastic bags, using less water bottles, recycling and reusing. And Uzma also said, reduce, reuse, recycle.
I love it. We're definitely on that same ideas. And you know what? As much as we talked about reusing things, you don't need to go buy new things to reuse. Take a look with your family at what you already have. I bet you have something you can drink out of every day. I bet you have a container somewhere that you can wash and reuse. There's already things you can find. There's no need to go buy things. So there's lots that you have already.
Okay, so this is our last call, guys. Before I start doing my wrap up, if anybody has any last minute questions, now's your only chance to get them into the chat before we start doing our wrap up. So I don't want to cut anybody off. I know a lot of you guys have quite a few kids in your class, so if any of them have little questions or comments, if you have comments on what you heard as well, your last chance, put them in the chat before we start to wrap things up. Okay. So before we say goodbye to our wonderful presenters, I did just want to do a little reminder. So what I have up on the screen here is some information about another upcoming event that's a bit of a similar vibe to what we've done today. So we are actually going to have Sydney and Daphne back. And Daphne, I'm really sorry, I do not have the new OceanWise logo on here yet. So we still have the old one. But we're going to have both of them back to present for World Ocean Day. So if you guys enjoyed this, you want to learn more about the ocean, definitely come back for World Ocean Day. That one's going to be on June 8th. And we're going to learn a little bit more about ocean conservation and helping the oceans. So you can go ahead and scan that QR code there. Or if you would like, that's a little bit easier, I can give you the link to the form in the chat. So if you haven't already signed up for it, I think this would be an awesome event if you thought today's was interesting and informative to sign up for. And a final thank you. So first off, thank you to everybody for joining and taking the time to learn more about this issue, because remember, educating yourself first is the best thing that you can do. So thank you to all of the teachers and students that were able to make it today. But a huge thank you to Sydney and Daphne for sharing all of their ideas with us today. You are both such wonderful presenters, and I hope that the kids learned as much as I did, but I definitely very much enjoyed today's event. So I just wanted to say a huge thank you from all of us at CGE.
Thanks. Thank you so much for having us. And thank you for everyone for participating. And I do hope you learned something and that you're feeling empowered to go and make some positive change.
I second what Sydney said, and thanks so much. I hope you remember and think of water today and how it's so important for us.
Awesome. And a couple from the chat. So we've got a few thank yous coming in the chat. Make sure you read through them. And don't forget, guys, I did include in the chat the links to both of these websites. So if you do want to learn more about FloodEd or about OceanWise, go ahead and click on those links that I shared. All right. Enjoy the rest of your day or night, wherever you're joining us from. And thank you again so much, everybody, for stopping by. We'll see you next time. Okay.